Welcome to Senior Salute.
Welcome to Senior Salute. I am Victoria Collier, and today we're going to be talking about the special issues of caregiving, the complexities as well as the rewards. I myself was a caregiver. I worked in a nursing home providing hands-on care to people who need total assistance. And I also was a caregiver to my father as he was dying with congestive heart failure. And whether you are taking care of intimate strangers or family members, it comes with challenges as well as rewards. And tonight, I was honored to be a guest at the Rosalind Carter Institute for Caregiving, where we got to watch 3 outstanding caregivers receive the award for caregiving. I took my whole crew, so come and watch.
Well, tonight is all about honoring caregivers. First, we will honor those who rarely receive recognition for what they do: family caregivers, paraprofessional caregivers, and volunteer caregivers. Then we will recognize leadership in collaborative partnerships that result in effective models of supporting care for caregivers. So let's begin by honoring Georgia caregivers who have made the lives of others better through their care and love.
And now we will meet our winners. I have with me today Michael Jones, and you have received the distinct honor of getting the Family Caregiver Award. How does that feel for you, Mr. Jones?
It is a very humbling experience. You would never think that people were watching what you do every day, and it's a great honor that someone actually saw that I was taking care of my mom like I should be, and they put me in for this award.
So being a caregiver, was that stressful?
Very.
And then how would you add the stress of not being able to financially take care of your mortgage anymore?
I'll put it this way, it went into a very dark place for a little while.
And would you call that depression?
Absolutely, absolutely, because you feel like you can't handle your responsibility, especially a man, you know, and I'm looking at my mother and my sister and 2 kids, and if we got put out on the street, you know, where would we go? Somehow I was invited to go to SWIGA's support group, caregiver support group, which opened the doors, the floodgates opened, and I kind of knew what it was time to do. You know, I was in denial, thinking that mom's going to get better, but mom's not going to get better.
After going to a support group meetings, you realized that things needed to change. Is that?
Once that I realized that, you know, her condition wasn't going to get any better, it helped me with the support of the caregivers there to become a care manager. So now I could manage my time, manage her time, and understand her illness more through more education.
That's great. So what would you pass on as far as any words of knowledge or wisdom to caregivers out there who could be in the position you were before when you were struggling?
Just remember that you're not alone. The world is full of caregivers. You know, you could have caregivers in every house along your block. Just remember that you're not by yourself, and to ask for help. There are wonderful programs out there that can assist you, from yard work to CNA programs, nursing, you name it, they're out there. Just get out and ask for help.
Ask for help. Great. Well, Mr. Jones, much deserved award, the Family Caregiver Award from the Rosalind Carter Institute for Caregiving. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, Giselle, and thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Tell me your experience in how you became a caregiver and how long you've been doing that.
Well, it's a really long journey. I started nursing school when I was 16 years old. In college, I did mental health nursing. I was just interested in doing that because it was just after genocide. I wanted to help many people having post-traumatic disorder.
So a few years, but you did not start in this country. Where did you start? Where was your training?
I'm from Rwanda. I came here in 2009. I went to CNA school, nursing assistant, at the end of 2009.
Tell me, where does your passion for being a caregiver come from?
Actually, I think it runs from the family because my grandfather was a nurse.
So your grandfather was a nurse.
Yes, and his firstborn was a nurse. His secondborn, who's my mom, was also a nurse.
And your mother was a nurse. So really like a family tradition.
Yes.
It's certainly something you can't teach.
When you love being a caregiver, when you have caring heart, it's not as difficult as it could be when you do it just for living. So I really enjoy it.
I'm going to ask you both this question, and it's a sensitive question, just because of the topic that it is. And as an elder care attorney, I hear from clients too regularly that they're concerned about having caregivers that can't speak English well because they're from another country. And so what is your experience with that? Giselle, have you had any limitations based on the fact that you're from another country?
Well, it has been really challenging because sometimes I can't understand well what he asking me to do. Sometimes I just feel frustrated because I think I have to understand it because I need to help him, but I'm really grateful because he doesn't get mad. He's trying to understand.
We have a lot of fun. I think you have to have a good sense of humor about it and just take things lightly because, goodness, you couldn't do anything. You're in it together and you just have fun and laugh about it. And there are going to be things you can't control that are frustrating enough.
And so you become intimate on a level with your caregivers because they're with you every single day.
You're very involved in each other's lives. All of the caregiver team, we're there for one another and we're a family.
Congratulations again. And thank you both for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back. What an inspiring evening. And it might interest you to know that Rosalind Carter was a caregiver for her mother as well, which is what inspired her to start the Institute for Caregiving. And we have been invited to join Giselle and Ross Mason in a day in the life of a caregiver. Come look.
I was injured August 2nd of 2007, so I've been injured. I'm going into my 7th year.
I actually started working with Ross in January 2010. So when I got here, when I saw him in a chair, I almost cried. I got emotional. I said, no, really, this is not gonna happen on somebody who is really young like him. I wasn't expecting to see, him in a wheelchair.
But at first, you're not worried about personality, you're worried about technical expertise. Can they do the things you need to do, make sure you go to the restroom so you don't have a stroke, turn you at night?
I was used to, work with different people. Like when you work in the hospital or whenever you just get like 5 or 8 patients at the same time, you don't really get close to somebody and feel connected. But working with one person, you know him better, he knows me better, he knows why I like, why I don't like.
And so you kind of go through a transition where you work with people that, have a personality that's consistent with yours, that you get along with well, it's a very intimate relationship.
It's easy to help and to make sure you respond to our needs, even if it doesn't communicate our needs, but you can read his mind because you really knows what he likes. You knows if he doing this or saying this or doing this, what he wants to say.
It's just seamless. I mean, I don't, like when I'm getting out of bed or getting something to eat, or I don't say anything. I mean, it's just, we've been working together for so long that it's just absolutely seamless.
Caregiving, I think, is calling because it's just passion. And then you really do what you cannot do if you don't have that heart, that caring heart, that passion.
There are a lot of challenges with health issues and not having mobility. Sometimes you're no different than you were before, but somebody who's never complained about it, just work hard, it's amazing to see that.
If I can do a good job, if somebody appreciates what I'm doing, it means I'm a good caregiver. So I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing because I'm good in that.
She's amazing. Giselle is absolutely an angel. She's one of the finest people I've ever met in my life. And I think she's been through, goodness, more trauma than I can imagine, with 1/7 of the population being slaughtered in 100 days with machetes. I can't imagine growing up in that environment, losing both my parents. It's just a tremendous blessing to get a chance to interact with someone who has that kind of a gratitude, joy, and appreciation. And it makes me feel thankful that I get a chance to spend time with somebody like her. It's been a tremendous blessing.
It's inspiring to see someone who does their job so well and that it can really be the inspiration for others who assume that role, whether they do it voluntarily or because it's part of what they need to do for a family member. Coming up next, we'll be speaking with author and accountant Bernadette Johnson, who wrote Business Blueprint. And we'll be talking about the tax implications and the business implications of being a caregiver. We are here with Bernadette Johnson, accountant and author of Business Blueprint. Welcome, Bernadette.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And in your role as accountant, do you see caregivers or businesses who employ caregivers and questions about taxes and how to handle those fun things?
Oh yes, oh yes. I have clients that are both employers of caregivers as well as caregivers, actually, and clients who employ caregivers. So I've seen it from all three angles.
All three angles. And as an elder care attorney, I get most of my questions around where my client is the senior citizen, like grandma, and that they are trying to decide, do we hire a company that uses employees as caregivers, or do they hire a company that uses what they call 1099, I guess, contract people?
Right, independent contractors.
Independent contractors. And should they use people who do not work for a company who are independent contractors? Do you have an opinion or a perspective on that, at least from the tax perspective?
Well, as the client, so let's say it's grandma. Grandma has to consider, by hiring a company, the company has taken on the responsibility of doing the background checks. The company has taken on the responsibility of handling payroll, making sure that the person is going to show up when they're supposed to show up.
People don't show up?
What? Yes. So hiring a company kind of takes that stuff away from grandma, so she doesn't have to be concerned or as concerned about those things.
Details.
Right, the details. However,
which grandma's not really doing usually. Usually it's like the child of
or the grandchild
or the
niece or someone, another family member.
Who's usually working and taking care of other things, and so it may be helpful not to have to worry about those details.
Right, and so that's the advantage to going through a company, because the company can take care of all of those things. And those are all important things. The company takes care of, like I said, the background checks. The company 9 times out of 10 has, or they should have, insurance. So you have that liability issue taken care of as well.
In case the caregiver gets injured while there, is that the kind of insurance you're talking about?
Yes,
Okay.
and that happens. It can happen when the caregiver is lifting grandma for her bath, or is just putting her from the chair to the bed and just lifting her the wrong way. And so the insurance can take care of those kind of things. And I also believe that the insurance can also take care of if the misfortunate event of a theft, then you have to think about those
You
kind
mean
of
like if a caregiver takes jewelry or money or a credit card from grandma?
Right.
Okay, when they're
Right.
in grandma's house, or if they live in assisted living, even there.
Right.
Okay.
Because those things happen, unfortunately.
They do. Yeah, I know. So what about hiring an independent person? So what are the differences there?
When you hire an independent person, so if grandma or grandma's niece has taken the route of hiring an independent person, now she's taking on the responsibility that the company would have normally taken on. So if there's a background check, sometimes you can find someone that's been referred to you who comes highly recommended, and those references I think are very valuable. So you take on the responsibility of doing just that background stuff, but the biggest piece is you take on the responsibility of the payroll piece.
Payroll, which means, and what does that mean? Do you have to pay into Social Security? Do you have to, what kind of reporting is?
Well,
Because I would think that the independent contractor would have the responsibility to report their income to the IRS, just like a waitress would with tips and
well,
things like that.
it's kind of twofold, and both parties are responsible. If you pay an individual, so if grandma pays an individual more than $600, which could happen in a week, if not not sooner,
Wait, $600. If they pay more than $600 per year,
in a year's time,
then they have to do what?
they have to report this income on Form 1099,
Okay.
miscellaneous.
And certainly, as you were about to allude to, is $600, you can wipe that away in just a day if
Right.
you need
Depending on the type
24-hour
of care, exactly. So depending on the type of care, it's really easy to reach the threshold. So a lot of times people don't realize I've reached that threshold, so now I have a responsibility. 1099 miscellaneous is an information return. It just lets the IRS know that you have paid this individual X number of dollars. And then that individual, the caregiver in this situation, would be responsible for reporting that income on their tax return.
So if grandma hires a company, the company takes care of that.
Exactly.
But if grandma hires a family member caregiver and pays that person,
Or a referral from a family member or someone.
or a friend,
Right.
or another person who works as a professional caregiver, but they're just not with a company.
Right.
So then grandma has to file those tax papers.
Right.
Okay. And does it matter whether or not they have a contract, a written legal agreement between grandma and the caregiver, whether or not they have to file that tax
No.
paperwork?
No, they should have a contract, and I know you can probably speak to that. But it doesn't matter. If you engage me, if you write me a check, then you're responsible for reporting that income that you've paid me, if it's over $600. And again, in this situation, it doesn't. There's no doubt that grandma or her relative will spend $600
Okay.
for an ongoing caregiver.
Right. Now, if I'm a caregiver and I'm trying to decide whether or not I want to be an employee of grandma or an independent contractor of grandma, what are the advantages to me as the caregiver going one way or the other?
Well, typically, if you are a caregiver, 9 times out of 10, most caregivers provide care for more than one person. So because they're available to other people, that is one of the qualifiers to being an independent contractor. And it's advantageous to be an independent contractor as a caregiver, even though they don't feel like it, and even though it sometimes seems painful because there are more forms to file and maybe your tax return costs more, but they get to deduct more than an employee would. For instance, if you had a caregiver who was an employee and maybe they were responsible for their license, they have to get licensed by the state, so they have to pay for their license. That license fee is more than likely not going to be deductible for the employee. There's ways to deduct it, but there's so many limits on it that 9 times out of 10, most people can't deduct just the licensing fee. However, the caregiver who is an independent contractor, that is immediately deducted from the income. So they can make the same amount of money and not have the same deductions. So what are deductions? It's like it decreases the taxable income.
So let me see if I have this right. So grandma has a person who works for her, and grandma's the only client, and so she goes in and grandma's the only person she takes care of. And grandma tells her when to be there, she tells her what to cook while she's there, and grandma even supplies the gloves and the materials to take care of grandma. Now, would that be an employee or would that be an independent contractor?
That's sounding a lot like an employee.
Like an employee.
Because there's control over her time. She couldn't send a substitute because grandma is looking for her and no one else. Grandma she's providing the supplies, so she's buying the gloves and whatever else is needed to care for her. So in that situation, that would be an employee-employer relationship.
Okay. And so then both grandma and employee would disclose to the IRS, of course, whatever she's getting paid. But she's getting paid after taxes, which is different than that second scenario you talked about, whereas now this person has maybe 4 different grandmas she takes care of. She gets to decide her schedule as to who and where she goes to see, when she goes to see them.
Right.
And usually maybe she's driving her own car, using her own gloves. And what you're saying is that's advantageous because now when she gets paid, she gets to buy all these things before she pays her taxes instead of after.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, are there any other advantages or disadvantages, or does it always come down to taxes? Because you know what I mean.
Well, there's always the control, and a lot of times, as an independent contractor, you have control, so you can say no, and you can say when. You know, it's funny. One of my favorite movies is Pretty Woman, and she says, "I say when and how much," and that's kind of what happens with an independent contractor. You get to say when. You get to say how much. So they can negotiate a lot more than maybe an employee could, because as an employee, you get paid this and, you know, and that's pretty much it. Independent contractor.
Stuck with the wages you're given.
Right,
Okay.
right. An independent contractor, however, must be disciplined. They have to keep good records.
And you don't mean